Good day. Quake was one of id Software's most enduring first-person shooters, second only to Doom itself. Quake 1 was a very different beast from the games that would follow. It had a Lovecraftian setting filled with gloomy castles and horrific monsters. And monsters so cheap that they made the Abyss Watchers look fair. The following Quakes would move to a purely sci-fi aesthetic, leaving Quake 1 to be a bit of an orphaned game. Throughout the years, the sheer presence of those Lovecraftian themes would endure, as would the id Tech 1 engine itself. In fact, surprisingly enough, some of the netcode is still used to this very day. Enter the current indie retro FPS market. What started with Rise of the Triad back in 2013 has given birth to the current market of indie retro first-person shooters, and really, the very concept fills my heart with a great deal of joy. Today, indie devs can finally make the games we, the gamers, want to actually play. They can now say, never got a sequel for X game? Well, screw it, we will make our own with rivet guns and powerful soap. And thus, Wrath, Aeon of Ruin was born. Killpixel saw that there was no true sequel to Quake 1, and thus set out to make their own, and by the great Yog Shoggoth have they succeeded. This game is currently in early access, so you have only 2 levels to play, and after this review I will be waiting for the full release to drop before I make another video on this game. For now though, you get a great deal of content for an early access game, and I feel fairly confident in basically gambling on this game's eventual release. Wrath, Aeon of Ruin is a 90s-style first-person shooter. There is no reloading, fast movement speed, and you can carry numerous cool-looking weapons at any one time. This game is a bit more advanced than Quake 1 in a few respects. It incorporates some aspects of Hexen and other complex games of the 90s. A big departure from Quake 1 is the fact that you have to activate doors instead of just running into them. I always found it kind of silly that in Quake engine games you had to bash your head into a door to open it, and I felt it was a step back from Doom. However, since you have to actually activate switches, it's rather easy to miss a switch and find yourself wandering around for a bit. The weapons in the game, while limited now, are still quite good. You start the game with a big-ass arm blade that has a charge attack, and it's fun to use right up until you get a big-ass revolver that does a decent amount of damage, and is a good ranged option, although I found that ammo is a bit limited. As is expected from a first-person shooter, you get an excellent double-barreled shotgun that is a good general-purpose weapon, although I feel these first 2 levels depend upon it a little too much. The machine gun of the game is the stake lawn chair, and it seems to be rather useless. Or it would be, had there not been an update drop right in the middle of this review, and in that update, the damage has been buffed, and makes the stake lawn chair a very good weapon for dealing with crowds of enemies. Lastly, you get the Glop lawn chair, and this is reminiscent of a weapon from Unreal Tournament, and is just as fun here as there. It's got plentiful ammo, and does tremendous damage to 2 really tough enemies. The weapons are off to a damn good start, as there is some strategy to using them, and they make the gameplay that much more enjoyable due to there not being one end-all be-all weapon. The gameplay is nothing short of an id tickler. It's quite fast-paced, and the enemy population has been calculated quite well, so well in fact, that the game never turns into a slog or becomes fatiguing. The enemies are also great fun to fight, and I really like the Great Value Caco Demon, as it brings a creepy new edge to the concept. The levels are quite exceptional as well. However, in the full release, I would like to see the first level become level 2, and level 2 become level 1. Level 1 is called The Crypts, and it's an endless array of white and gray areas that kind of run into one another and get boring fast, and sadly does not put this game's best foot forward. Contrast this to level 2, The Swamps. We see a better use of color and level architecture, and this is where we get to see the devs really shine. The levels for Wrath are Turok styled. You start the game with a hub world, and then you select a level from that hub. The levels are not broken up into little first-person shooting bites, but rather are one giant map. This is excellent, because it allows for a great degree of exploration. The developers do need to take care and ensure that the later levels have the great texture work of the swamps, and not the monotonous texture work of the crypts. The game actually uses the Quake 1 engine and utilizes the Dark Places source port to run on modern machines, and it works quite well, and was quite stable, and was playable in 2K. Graphically, the game looks quite retro, but way better than the original Quake 1. Instead of enemies with like one polygon, the enemies here are quite well detailed and the level architecture is quite impressive. Like with Quake 1, the music is just atmospheric and it does give the game quite the creepy vibe. Sound design is also quite excellent, the weapons sound powerful, and the shotgun is the right and proper hand of Talos. The enemies sound creepy, and the great value Cacodemon is actually kind of terrifying at times. One aspect of the game that initially annoyed me was the method of saving. When I first played the game, I felt that the devs were being tryhards, but upon further reflection, I find that it's actually quite clever and works better than you might think. In the game, you have two methods of saving. There are intro-level checkpoints and a little magic gubbin that you pick up, and with said gubbin, you can save whenever you want, but its uses are limited. I was initially annoyed by this, since I like being able to save whenever I want, and these levels can be long and hard, but the game usually gives you enough charges that it's not a big deal, and it actually makes the gameplay that much more satisfying as you have to strategically plot out where and when you want to save. There is not a story in-game just yet, but you can find it on their website, and it's adequate. It's more serious than other retro-styled FPSs, but I feel that it needs a little more work, and it's less inspired from the 90s and more inspired from Dark Souls. In this game, you are the Outlander. After setting sail upon the ageless sea, you wash up on the shores of the dying world. You are charged by the Shepherd of Lost Souls, aka Great Value Emerald Herald, with killing the remaining guardians of the old world and then becoming the undead monarch and linking the flame of the first kiln. Okay, I might have just made that last bit up. Upon reflection, I'm going to give the developers the benefit of the doubt and assume they came up with this on their own and they didn't just rip off Dark Souls. So maybe this plot, as the game develops, will get better and a little less Dark Soulsian. Only time will tell. Awesomely enough, whilst I was working on this review, an update dropped, and that update is absolutely excellent. The level it introduces is nothing short of exceptional, and shows that the game is going in the right direction. And so, I am GeneralLotz, wishing you good Quake 1.5, and good Slayer's Testaments, or whatever makes you happy. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and if you can, please consider supporting me on Patreon so that I can continue bringing you this awesome content.